I've been investing for about 14 years now, and for the last 5 I've worked full time as a finance content creator. I don't see myself as a guru, but I've had the privilege of learning from some of the best financial minds in the world through my podcast. Today, I want to share the key lessons that have shaped the way I invest, principles that guide my decisions, and may help you think differently about your own approach. My personal strategy is simple. I invest in a global index fund. This gives me broad exposure to the entire global stock market. It isn't complicated, flashy, or designed to outperform in any given year, but for me it works. I'm not claiming this is the best way for everyone. It's just the method I stick with. And that's the real key. The best investment strategy is the one you can consistently follow. Remember, though, this isn't financial advice. All investments carry risk, and the value of what you put in can rise or fall. So why do I invest? When I first started, I thought investing would be my ticket to quick riches. That mindset led to mistakes and losses. Over time, my outlook matured. Today, I invest for 2 reasons. The first is to protect myself from inflation, which quietly erodes the value of money over time. The second is to free myself from relying solely on labor. My time is limited, and one day I won't be able to work. By investing, I can turn the results of my labor into assets that may generate long-term returns and support me when my ability to earn disappears. The stock market, for me, represents ownership in the productivity of people worldwide. By investing in it, I own a slice of global human activity. So my goal is not to chase the biggest winners, but to preserve the value of my money and grow it steadily. The worst mistake would be losing what I've worked hard to earn. That's why instead of focusing on winners, I focus on avoiding losers. This principle reminds me of a story. During World War II, Charlie Munger, who later became Warren Buffett's business partner, worked as a meteorologist. His forecasts decided whether pilots would fly. To make better judgments, he used a technique called inversion, asking not "how do I succeed?" but "how do I fail?" Applied to investing, the question becomes, what leads to losing money? The data is clear. Research on the U.S. stock market from 1980 to 2020 shows that about 40% of companies in the Russell 3000 experienced catastrophic losses, losing 70% of their value and never recovering. Over the long run, more companies fail than succeed, and only a small fraction deliver the bulk of total returns. Another study covering 90 years of stock performance found that just 4% of companies accounted for all the wealth creation. In other words, if you pick individual stocks, the odds are stacked against you. A few investors like Buffett and Munger are brilliant at it, but most of us aren't. For me, trying to compete with the best stock pickers in the world doesn't make sense. Instead, I aim for the average, because the average of the global stock market has historically been very rewarding. This brings me to risk. We often hear that higher risk means higher reward, but many people overlook what that really means. High potential returns always come with a high chance of failure. For every investor who gets rich betting on a risky stock or cryptocurrency, countless others lose everything. Even in sectors that deliver big returns, like tech, failure rates are high. So yes, I take risks, but only in areas where I believe I have an edge, like creating content or building projects I understand deeply. When it comes to investing, I'd rather keep things boring and predictable. In fact, when it comes to investing, effort doesn't always equal results. In most areas of life, working harder pays off, but with investing, constantly tinkering often reduces returns. There's even a story, often repeated though hard to trace, that the best performing investors at Fidelity were actually people who had forgotten about their accounts, or had passed away. Why? Because they didn't trade, they didn't overthink, they just stayed invested. As economist Eugene Fommer once said, money is like soap. The more you handle it, the less you have. Trying to time the market often backfires, missing just the 10 best days of the S&P 500 over 30 years would have cut your returns in half. That's why I simply buy a global index fund regularly, regardless of the news or market conditions. This approach will never make me the top investor in any given year, but it ensures consistency, and in the long run, consistency matters more than perfect timing. I like to think of investing like brushing my teeth, automatic, routine, and not something I spend energy worrying about. Another reason I avoid complexity is because incentives in the financial world often push in the wrong direction. Financial advisors may encourage complicated products to justify their fees. The industry designs complexity to sell more high-cost products. But time and again, studies show that simple, low-cost strategies outperform complex ones. Your investment plan should be simple enough to explain in a few sentences. Mine is: buy a global index fund every month in a tax-efficient account, no matter what the headlines say. But even with a simple plan, we face another challenge: our own brains. Human psychology is poorly suited to investing. We're wired with biases like loss aversion, where losses feel worse than gains, making us sell when we should hold. We suffer from herd mentality, chasing hype and fearing missing out. Recency bias tricks us into thinking what's going up will keep going up. These tendencies hurt us as investors. That's why the best approach is often to automate decisions, limit emotional influence, and stick to a system. There are also practical factors we can control, like fees and taxes. Fees may look small, but they compound into huge differences over decades. For example, on the same contributions and returns, a portfolio with 0.2% fees could end up nearly double the size of one with 2% fees after 40 years. Taxes are another hidden drag. Using tax-advantaged accounts like pensions or ISA can significantly boost long-term outcomes. While markets are uncertain, reducing fees and taxes provides a guaranteed return. After 14 years, the biggest lesson I've learned is that investing isn't about chasing excitement or complexity. It's about removing risks where possible, cutting unnecessary costs, simplifying decisions, and resisting emotional impulses. In other words, protect yourself from catastrophic losses, reduce effort, avoid complexity, keep fees and taxes low, and stop others, or even yourself, from interfering with your plan. This isn't the full story of everything I've learned, but if I had to condense my philosophy into a single sentence, it would be this: buy simple, cheap, diversified investments regularly, stay patient, and let time do the work.